Well, our friend Stephen Quayle back with us. Stephen, welcome back.
Hi, George. Good. And as we're dealing with CERN now and stargates, so the entities that are being associated with CERN, it's fascinating. There was a story, 2 days ago, that the scientists have proposed that if the aliens show up, they're going to be giants. Did you see that one?
Yes, I sure did.
So, I think it was Barry Kamish who wrote about giants in the Holy Land a number of years ago, maybe a decade ago, when the saucers were landing in, or the ships were landing in Israel. Some of these things were 9 feet tall. I maintain, as you know, that the fallen angels, which I'd like to clear up some words tonight. The Nephilim are fallen angels, and the fallen angels in the Book of Giants, which are the Dead Sea Scrolls, some of the Qumran scrolls, talk about literally the fallen angels. Obviously, Zechariah Sitchin called them the Anunnaki. People referred to them as aliens, but the fallen angels came and not only polluted the human genome, but they polluted the animal genome too. In essence, they corrupted everything genetically. Fallen angels can transform themselves. They can become shapeshifters. We're now seeing, if you will, a prevalence throughout the world of preternatural, meaning above natural or supernatural events. There's more spirals opening up. And by the way, when people see spirals in Native American legends and in Aboriginal legends, whenever you would see a spiral on a petroglyph or a stone carving or rock carving, that was always indicative of a stargate. We're seeing now the stories coming out. As I was told years ago by a general in special operations that tracks down the stuff that goes bump in the night, he said, Steve, it's never what's above ground, it's what's underneath the ground. In other words, it's not what's on the Giza Plateau, it's underneath the Giza Plateau. And we're just seeing now that some of the hugest pyramids in the world are in Bosnia, they're in Romania. And there are so many fascinating stories. What most people have never seen before, and I haven't, and no one has done it. I mean, there are people who've written stories, books on fairy tales, is typing it as how it relates to the alien deception and how it plays into the giant issue. And so, in talking about giants, George, after all these years of writing about giants, investigating giants, right now we've got an expedition going on for giants, not dead bones, but living ones, because of the interest in, again, I want to make this clear, not bones, the real entities. I will just say this, certain spy agencies are working overtime to watch everything that's going on in other parts of the world right now in an expedition or two that's going on. That's all I can say. I'm not trying to be, melodramatic. I'm just saying that people really do monitor this stuff. Our Sardinia expedition, Tim Alberino and a guy named Darren and some other people went on that. Basically, they were met by very, very cautious individuals who are 50 and 60, but remember seeing the helicopters coming in and taking giant skeletons out of Sardinia that were 18 feet tall. And the fascinating that in some of those areas right now, where they literally call a certain area the Tomb of the Giant, most people don't realize that on Sardinia is one of the largest pyramids in the world. Some of the canals that were in Sardinia match, if you will, the designation of Plato and Atlantis. I don't believe that Sardinia was Atlantis, but I believe that Atlanteans, after Atlantis was destroyed, settled in Sardinia. And what's fascinating to me is you've got the same thing in Sardinia as you have in Antarctica, as you have in the Arctic, as you have in South America, as you have in Australia. Whenever this stuff turns up, if you will, it's not men in black that show up. It's sometimes men who want to make sure that the world never sees the light of that. One of my guys just encountered someone in another country who said, you must realize this, that this is the most controlled subject in the world, and they will do anything to keep it quiet. The man who said that was terrified, and so to make a long story short, the team had to meet with him. Nephilim in the Old Testament, fallen angels, when they had sex with earth women, they produced the giants. 33 times in the Old Testament, the word is Rephaim. The word Nephilim, which everybody calls a giant now Nephilim, it's not really a correct term. They call demons Nephilim. That's not correct either. But when the fallen angel had sexual relationship with an earth woman and produced a giant, obviously, that giant was not just a natural entity. It had a supernatural element to it. That's how come there are people that want to claim, well, because of the Earth's gravity in those days, nothing could be that size. That just simply is not true, because even the modern systems of transportation that we use in all of our top secret spacecraft and aircraft uses electrogravitics. The ancients knew how to overcome gravity with harmonics, in essence, harmonic levitation. So the Nephilim are the fallen angels. The Rephaim are the giants. When the giants died, whether it's Goliath or Polyphemus, the 400-foot Cyclops, we'll get to that maybe in this later on the show. The point is that spirit, that hybrid spirit, half human, half fallen angel, became demons. Demons seek to possess. They seek to inhabit. They seek to reintroduce themselves into the human genome, and it all centers around sex. Interestingly enough, it's amazing that whether you're dealing with aliens, and you and I joked on the air before, George, for a good time, stop off at planet Earth. I think they made a really bad science fiction movie once called Earth Women Are Easy. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
No, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, but now someone says, well, why would you bring that up? Simply because there is an underlying tone in the, if you will, in Hollywood to bring into a dimension, just as CERN, and we'll get to that in a minute, but the fallen angels are the Nephilim. The giants are the Rephaim. Now, why is this important to establish? Because people use the wrong terms. They assume that demons, and in the Greek, daimonissimi, it means disembodied. If something's disembodied, it had to be embodied. Jesus taught when an unclean spirit, a demon, goes out, it seeks to return to the place or the person that it got cast out of. So why is this critical now? Because what's fascinating, in the last 2 weeks, people have brought up the fact, scientists, that they could reconstitute Hitler. Did you see that story?
Mm-hmm, sure did. Why would they want to do that?
Well, here's the deal. There is a hierarchy in evil. There is a very present pecking order in evil. And if I told you that, and I've been told by people, I couldn't know this, so I don't know this firsthand, but when you got guys that have 4 stars, and they're telling you that there's a group of individuals out there looking for the DNA of all the most evil, malevolent people in history, then that these men destroyed marvelously, very few women, by the way, but, I mean, whether you're looking for the DNA of Genghis Khan, whether you're looking for the DNA of, any of the famous butchers in history.
Mm-hmm. Attila the Hun.
Attila the Hun, thank you, that's the one I was struggling with. I am told that they possess those gene banks. And as people, I've maintained on your show, and we've talked about it, cloning, cloning human beings. I said, what happens if the people that you think are your elected politicians, that some of them have been actually displaced or replaced or cloned? People used to laugh and, they'd make fun, and I'd read some of the comments, but now, I mean, it's given that they're going to clone individuals, they're going to have triple parent babies. So when you talk about having, let's just say this, the most malevolent beings in the world, recorded history, when you're talking about having their DNA and being able to reconstitute them, then the demons that inhabited those people that caused them to do all those things will come back into their bodies. So basically you can call it reanimation. So in the world of hell's hierarchy, they want these individuals walking back on the earth. And then, it was fascinating. I was told by a general, and again, I could not know this, that the fight was to get Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh's DNA from the sarcophagus that was in Iraq. And prior to the invasion, he basically told me this. He said, Steve, most of the special operations beyond the dealing with foreign governments and the introduction of advanced teams is trying to locate all of the hidden and the alien, when I say alien, hidden or alien DNA or the entities themselves to extract both the DNA and also the technology. Now, again, most people would be flabbergasted to know this, but at one of NASA's and the National Space Administration, NASA, National Aeronautic and Space Administration, the deal is that they had the Hindu scientists, and by the way, the Indian scientists are some of the brightest men in the world, and they were presenting Sanskrit texts on Vimanas. So here you have the leading astrophysicists, you have the leading, if you will, designers of both known and unknown spacecraft, and you've got the Hindus presenting the propulsion systems, the design parameters, the control mechanisms of Vimanas, and they made it kind of how would you say, they mocked them, but these guys are going back 4,000 and 6,000 years. So how could anybody get that kind of if you will, blueprints for those unless they existed? So I thought that was kind of fascinating. Our new DVD, True Legends, the series, The Unholy Sea, starts in Peru, which is called the Navel of the World. And Francis Bacon, which a lot of people believe was actually the man who wrote all of Shakespeare's works, but going beyond that point, talked about all of the advanced electronic and scientific devices that would be in the future in the last years of his life. Some people say it was 1626, 1627. But what's fascinating, George, and this is what people have got to understand, is he was talking about everything from deep underground facilities, skyscrapers a mile high, wind and water turbines, everything from electrical devices, genetic labs, lasers, powerful telescopes, everything that we're dealing with right now, from flying machines, submarines, and holographic projections, he was in possession of. And the question in his book, New Atlantis, how did he get those? Well, as you know, we started our world, if you will, tour of antiquity and ancient inventions and the giants in Peru. It's fascinating because Peru is if you will, one of the areas in the world where all the legends of giants, the giant bones, and advanced technology meet together. I got an email from a gentleman who said his great-grandfather escorted Hitler into Peru. We know he obviously went to Brazil, Argentina, but what's the specialty about Peru? And it's fascinating because the Unholy Sea, we're documenting the alien connection, and what's fascinating even now is that we had the C-130 pilot on who first appeared on your show back in 2007, I think, and we've got him on film talking about the giants, and I know Lynn Marzulli has also gotten corroborating evidence on that. Right. But where we're at right now is we're dealing with soft disclosure, and the Vatican's attempt right now to control the narrative. When Tim Alberino, the director of The Unholy Sea, was in Rome, he had the chance to meet with Zacharias Sitchin, one of his billionaire friends, one of the most famous Italian billionaires, and Tim and our camera crew got him on record as saying that even Zacharias Sitchin talked about the time an Anunnaki showed up on his bed. Anunnaki in his world, fallen angel in mine. So when we were interviewing all the different people in Rome and interviewing them in Sardinia and Malta, I would say this, the most mind-blowing thing that is present is the fact that the Lucifer telescope on Mount Graham was referred to literally by these insiders as looking for the return of Lucifer, kind of like Childhood's End, which Netflix played. And this is unfolding right now as you and I are talking.
And back to Bacon too, Stephen, for a second. I mean, what gave him this prophetic ability?
Well, may I just read this real quick paragraph?
Sure.
It says something.
And this we do also. This is Francis Bacon talking. We have consultation, which of the inventions and experiences which we have discovered shall be published, and which not, and take all an oath of secrecy for the concealing of those which we think fit to keep secret, though some of those we do reveal, sometimes to Satan, some not. It was similar to what Dr. von Braun and Dr. Obertroff said about how the Nazis were so able to advance quickly, and they said they had help from outsiders. They had help from aliens. So what's fascinating is Bacon started out in Peru, and Peru is one of the depositories and it has one of the largest underground tunnel systems in the world called the Shinkana. Those underground tunnels went worldwide. So in the time of his writing, and obviously he was talking about the New Atlantis, which he never finished. It was all of the technological and scientific marvels of Atlantis that evidently some of the Atlanteans went to Peru, and obviously we're seeing now the opening up of so much advanced technology as the stargates open. So the stargates in Peru, the presence of stargates all over the world, the spiral, for instance, the Norway spiral. We're in the desert Southwest interviewing Native Americans. They're all talking about the same thing, George, and it's that the giants are coming back. It's fascinating. You wouldn't expect that to be coming out of the Native Americans. Francis Bacon was part of a secret society, and whether you call it the Egyptian Brotherhood, a lot of the Masonic and the secret societies are based on advanced knowledge, which they take oaths of secrecy to. The same thing that Hitler's SS, and the SS means the dark sun, not what most people believe it to mean. So the Brotherhood of the occult, the word occult meaning hidden, goes deep into the Peruvian underground, and what is most important is that one of the most famous Peruvian archaeologists, explorers, absolutely established the Shinkana, which the tunnel system, and in Cusco, Peru, the Coricancha, which is a giant church, kind of like convent, was built over the entrance to this tunnel system that the Incans and all of the people of that region knew existed. These were built by giants. By the way, these weren't built, and this is something that I want to get out right now. In all of our studies of both the Aztec, the Maya, and the Inca, none of them claimed they built what they possess. None of them.
How do you find these stories?
Well, interestingly enough, a lot of them come off of response from people that listen to Coast and other radio programs that I'm on, and we're literally getting flooded right now with people from Eastern Europe, people from even China, Siberia, saying, you've got to come here. We have evidence of giants, and we follow up the leads. And one of the things that's amazing, George, is there's a word I've got to share with people. It's called the Septuagint, and that's the Hebrew Bible translated into Greek. Now listen to this, okay? This is Isaiah 13. Lift up a standard on the mountains of the plain, exalt the voice of them, beckon with the hand, open the gates, ye rulers. I give command and I bring them. Giants are coming to fulfill my wrath, rejoicing at the same time and insulting. You know, we've talked a lot about stargates. It's becoming more prevalent and prominent. For instance, a good example is about maybe a month ago, the NASA announced that there was Martian Morse code. Did you see that story?
Yes, I did.
Well, what's truly intriguing about that is when Tim and my film crew were down in Peru and Bolivia in the Altiplano, and the late David Flynn, who wrote Cydonia, The Secret Chronicle of Mars, put forth the fact that there is an actual language engraved into the landscape. And I've talked to scientists in the last couple months trying to get the deciphering going. Now, it's my contention that obviously NASA and the supercomputers have already deciphered the language of the fallen angels. And isn't it interesting that even the Incan priests had a way of tying knots called quipu and could tell the whole history of the fallen angels, the giants, and everything. So what I'm saying is, as I talk and we research this all over the world, people are talking about strange anomalies, strange phenomenon, stargates opening, everything from flying saucers, orbs, and things have changed, pun intended, in the atmosphere. It's battle in outer space, battle on inner space, battle under the ground, and now things coming up on the ground. And, you know, when you ask me how we follow these leads, we're basically going out of the book of Genesis, chapter 6, talking about the giants in those days before the flood and after those days, and people just don't get it. I mean, I cannot find, after 40 years, any place in the world that does not have its legends of giants and of, you know, the fallen angels having sex with earth women, and it's all over. Now look at the genetic manipulation going on, and it's fascinating because this is the very same stuff that Francis Bacon talked about in 1626.
And the mixture, Stephen, of animal and human, to me, is absolutely bizarre, and it's going to get worse, isn't it?
It is going to get worse. When I wrote the book Genetic Armageddon, it was so hard, George, for people to wrap their mind around the fact that the day would come when animal and human genetic material would be combined to literally bring back the mythological creatures that have so filled the pages of history. And that's why I use the title True Legends. Xenogenesis means a third set of DNA, interesting, three-parent children, that's added into the mixture. And so what we're talking about in the New Atlantis isn't really the New Atlantis, it's the Old Atlantis, and the very fact that this ancient technology, and including stargates, now most people can't even grasp that. They think it was just a series on TV and a great movie, which in my opinion was a great movie. But what's more important right now is all of the geophysical activity going on Earth. Obviously, we've got the volcanoes going off. Now, what is the number one drudge headline dealing with what the billionaires want? The billionaires basically want eternal life. They want life extension.
That's
you
right.
know, they want to go to the stars.
And bunkers.
And bunkers. Isn't that bunkers? Billionaires for bunkers.
What we do different on the conferences, and this is critical, we have a start, we have a finish. And we're going to have a 12-foot giant there. And why this is critical
A 12-foot giant?
Yeah, a 12-foot giant.
A human?
Oh, no. I wish. Listen, if I had a 12-foot...
Oh, boy, if you had that...
Yeah, if I had that, I'd have, probably SWAT teams. No, worse than that. I'd have Delta teams with rocket launchers there. I'd feel like King Kong, having King Kong. But it is the literal size built by one of the finest anatomical sculptors in the world, the guy's named Mark Patrick, who will be there. It's absolutely astonishing. We'll also have a skull there, which you guys put on the show the last time that I was there, and people say, well, I don't believe it. What's interesting, George, is these are absolute, if you will, blueprints based on the Spanish conquistadors recording everything as Pizarro, which I'm not in favor of, conquered all the empires he conquered, and obviously Cortez, but these are eyewitness accounts, and then when you match them with the ancient history, and for the record, the Aztec, Inca, and Maya all attributed their, if you will, technology and the buildings that are built, whether they're the pyramids and whether they're the walls of Sacsayhuaman or Ollantaytambo, and some of the biggest megalithic architecture in the world, they attribute that to giants, okay? So what's fascinating is that we're coming right back to the point where people have to get a feel for how tall 12 feet or 12-foot giants are, but it's more than interesting. We have eyewitness testimony. We've heard of the Smithsonian cover-up. We've heard of the Egyptian cover-up, obviously all the stories about Egyptian artifacts. And I'm here to tell you that one of the most famous geologists in the world, when asked why all of the land masses in the Grand Canyon, all the buttes, etc., have Egyptian names, he told his graduate students it's because of the artifacts that were found there. So this individual was taken into this, and this is true, was taken, and we got this guy. I mean, it's not just somebody who posted something on the internet, testifying as to what he was shown in the underground, if you will, repositories, kind of like the Raiders of the Lost Ark, buildings that go 4 stories down, 100 yards each, with 100-yard intersecting tunnels, and all the Egyptian artifacts and all the giants and stuff, and he saw it and was told about it. Now remember, the Smithsonian was asked back in the late 1800s, early 1900s by Egypt themselves to either return their artifacts that were found in the Americas, especially North America, to Egypt, or destroy them. So there was a secret agreement, and I catalog all that. And we've tried, George, for probably 15 years to get someone who would come forth. And I believe it was literally a miracle from heaven that somebody, and by the way, his bona fides check out, his relationships, everything. So this is pretty fascinating because, you know, people say, oh, that's just crazy. There are people that write blogs against me that, you know, this is totally crazy. But listen, I found a 1915 newspaper article that the Smithsonian and Stanford were fighting over the remains of a 15-foot giant, offering huge money. So why this is critical, why is the giant issue covered up, and how does it affect the super soldier, is because it rewrites history. And right now, the cover-up and cover-over of history is what the Illuminati, if you will, the global, what I would call world masters, they want to put their spin on it. So it's kind of like, if you will, a supernatural Hegelian dialectic. They control the narrative, and they control the outcome. If the truth is thrown into a controlled narrative, then people have to think. And the last thing that the people that are trying to destroy 5.5 billion people on the planet want is thinking individuals. Therefore, the zombification of the American masses and pretty much a lot of the world through television, through sound, sonic, and all of the different, if you will, reprogramming of the brains, the electromagnetic fields generated by 4G and 5G, obviously a net, the 5G net, and the, if you will, the total encapsulation of the planet in an electronic surveillance state, that they want to know everything, they want to know what you think, they want to be able to put thoughts into your mind, they want to be able to control whoever's left alive. Now, obviously, God is declaring that isn't going to happen, but it's going to seem like up until a certain point, until he literally says enough, that all hell is breaking loose. And I suggest to you that all hell is breaking loose.
Sounds like end times, Stephen.
It is the end times. And we're not, quote, as they say in the South, we're not fixing to get there. We are there. And again, this whole issue of transhumanism, this book, I've got to say this. This is my final futurist definition.
It may be your best job, by the way.
I would say this, and I would say it's a composite, new, well-researched piece, and how vaccinations play into it. And look, here's the thing. I'm not talking about just vaccines against diseases, but I'm talking about the introduction of other than human genetic material. Because
I mean, already in Japan, they've got approval to mix human body parts into animals.
Right. And those are called chimeras.
Stephen, what about the ancients? Were there ancient robots in the past?
Yes, the first one, and obviously people say, well, there's no proof of it, but the Colossus of Rhodes, which was 100 feet tall, may have been the literal Talos, or T-A-L-O-S, some people pronounce it Talos, that was placed on Earth by, quote, the fallen angels. Obviously, some people claim Zeus, but all of the titans of Greek mythology were fallen angels. All of the Olympians were their offspring, the giants, which the Bible specifically calls the mighty men of renown. And, George, the DARPA, we were talking about Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine all of the robotic things that they're trying to mimic in nature, from robotic bats to insects?
Yeah, little flies with cameras on them.
Absolutely. And, I want to share something. Jesus said that this time men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. DARPA is extremely concerned with subterranean caverns, 3D mapping them, tomographically mapping the surface, sending bats with cameras on them into some of the most inhospitable and unknown caverns. And I want to share this. I've said this before, but it's critical. A guy that lives in the world of fighting back against stuff that goes bump in the dark said, if you want to know what we deal with, Steve, look at the movie Cave and the Descent. And he said, that's nothing to what we have to deal with. Well, those are pretty terrifying movies, but it seems like there's a whole lot of concern. And by the way, people probably don't realize this, but there is a prophecy in the Septuagint in Isaiah 13 talking about God sending the giants to make war against the technology. God is sending his army of giants, and this is something that is so off of most people's radar, George. And so this is the kind of stuff that people have got to be prepared for. And the genetic engineering theme is so, how do I say this? People make it sound so harmless, yet it's so nefarious.
Remember that case in Afghanistan, Stephen?
Yeah, I do. And there were two giants separated by a couple years. I know that there are people claiming the Kandahar giant was not real, and the Bagram giant that, George, I had, if you remember, the pilot.
We had the pilot on
your show.
Yep.
And it's hard for people to understand that there are live giants. So it's interesting. I talked to another soldier that was in basic training real quick. When David, King David killed Goliath, he had to cut his head off. What people don't understand, there is a life force that's part angelic in these things, and the military was training these hunter-killer teams to go in and take out the giants, and using grenades, M203 grenade launchers, to literally blow their heads off, and they were being taught to aim higher, twice as high as a normal man. And one of the guys I talked to, obviously, I said, I don't even want to know your name. Tell me. I was able to cross-reference his story, different part of Afghanistan, with the Bagram, the pilot story that was told on Coast to Coast. And literally, both those guys had independent, and I've talked to probably a half a dozen people, and people say, I don't believe it. Well, I don't care what you believe. In the mouth of two or three witnesses, every word should be established. And these things are coming back. And I have a whole different take on gun control. I mean, I'm obviously opposed to it, but I'm not wanting to be lunch, okay, or a Steve kebab for something that, ate special operations teams in Afghanistan. So my take on this is that these entities that will come back, if you will, regenerated and or brought out of stasis, suspended animation, I believe that's a background reason to disarm the public. And for the record, people always send me emails after your show. From the people that kill them, they have to use, and I'm sorry, but here it is, ballistically, it's got to be solid copper, because the giant's body has a different temperature and a different composition to their blood, and solid copper does something to the blood. And then basically...
Didn't know that.
Yeah, and you've got to use smoke. I was approached by a certain group of individuals that don't, exist, but they do exist, telling me the smoke grenades, too, the reason smoke, it fouls the smelling of the giants, okay, like smoke grenades, like paintball people use and stuff. And you remember the old statement, fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman?
I remember that as a kid.
Yep, and so the smoke interferes with the olfactory sense of the giants.
I don't think we said blood, though, in those days.
Yes. Well, let me say this. One thing that is interesting, the giants do have a almost harpy-like ability through their nasal pharyngeal passages
to create harmonics that can offset gravity, okay? Now, sound, remember, God spoke the worlds into existence. And people who obviously don't believe in God can't accept that. But the giants throughout history had the ability to move and overcome gravity by the shrill nature of specific sounds. Now, going to the biblical perspective, Jesus says the power of life and death is in the tongue. And so, therefore, there's a difference between what I would call book faith. Yes, that's true. But practical faith, and practical faith comes with the authority of watching God's word be spoken and having it effective. When Jesus said, rise up and walk to the lame man, those words had power. He told us if we even but spoke to the mountain and said, be thou removed and cast in the sea, that would happen.